You were taught a lie, not a harmless one, a dangerous one. You were taught that anger is strength, that losing your temper means you care, that when someone disrespects you, snapping back is justified, necessary, even admirable. But the truth is colder. Every time you get angry, you don't gain power. You hand it away. The moment your chest tightens, the moment your jaw clenches, the moment your pulse rises and your thoughts narrow, you've already lost. Because anger is not dominance. Anger is exposure. It tells the world exactly where you're vulnerable. It reveals which buttons still work on you. And once someone knows that, they don't need to overpower you. They just need to press. Think back, honestly. Every argument, every outburst, every message you wish you hadn't sent, every reaction you spent hours replaying in your head afterward. What did anger give you? Not respect, not leverage, not control. It cost you clarity. It cost you dignity. And most importantly, it cost you position. While you were reacting, someone else was watching. While you were explaining, someone else was learning. While you were emotional, someone else was calm. And calm always wins. Here's the part most people never realize. The person who angers you doesn't need to defeat you. They just need to move you. Once your emotions are in motion, your judgment follows. Once your judgment slips, your behavior becomes predictable. And predictable people are easy to manage. This is not about suppressing emotion. And it's not about pretending you don't feel anything. That's another trap. This is about understanding the game that's being played beneath the surface of everyday interactions. Because the world is not as random as it appears. Human behavior is patterned. Provocations are rarely accidental. And most people don't act from strength. They act from impulse. When someone insults you, challenges you, or tries to pull you into conflict, they're not demonstrating power. They're testing access. They're asking, without words, can I move you? Can I affect you? Can I make you react on my terms? Anger answers yes, and once that answer is given, the dynamic is set. This is why the loudest people rarely control the room, why the most emotional voices are rarely the most influential, why the person who speaks the least often decides the outcome. Power doesn't announce itself. It observes. It waits. And it understands something most people never do. The first person to lose emotional control loses strategic control. Today, that changes. Not by becoming passive, not by becoming cold for the sake of it, and not by turning yourself into someone you're not, but by learning how to step out of reaction entirely, by understanding why anger arises, how it's exploited, and what replaces it when you stop playing the game everyone else is trapped in. Because the goal is not to be calm. The goal is to be untouchable. And once you see how anger actually works, once you understand what it costs you, you'll never rush to give it away again. Most people believe conflict is spontaneous, that disrespect just happens, that anger erupts because someone crossed a line. That belief keeps them weak, because what looks like chaos is usually structure. What feels personal is often mechanical, and what triggers anger is rarely accidental. Every interaction you enter is a quiet negotiation of power. Most people don't realize this because they're too busy reacting. They speak before they think. They defend before they assess. They escalate before they understand. And in doing so, they reveal everything. Here's the reality most never confront. People don't provoke you when they feel powerful. They provoke you when they feel threatened. Threatened by your presence, your competence, your independence, or by something in themselves they don't want to face. Provocation is not confidence. It's insecurity reaching outward. And insecurity has one goal: movement. When someone insults you, mocks you, or challenges you, they're not trying to win an argument. They're trying to shift the frame. They want you off balance. They want your attention. They want your emotional energy directed toward them. Because the moment you react, the frame flips. You're no longer choosing. You're responding. And the person who responds is no longer leading the interaction. This is the game beneath the game. Most people never see it because they're inside it. They confuse emotion with authenticity. They confuse reaction with strength. They confuse volume with dominance. But dominance doesn't need noise. Dominance needs position. And position is established by who controls themselves first. Watch carefully the next time tension appears. The person who provokes is almost always unsettled. Their words come quickly. Their tone sharpens. Their body leaks urgency. They need something from you. Your anger, your defense, your validation, your submission. And the fastest way to give it to them is to react. Anger is a signal flare. It tells the other person, this matters to me. This each of me. This can move me. Once they know that, they don't need to guess anymore. They've found the lever. This is why people who get angry often find themselves surrounded by more conflict, not less. Because reaction invites repetition. When someone sees that a button works, they press it again, and again, and again. Not because they're evil, but because humans follow incentives. If anger gets a reaction, anger will be used. If silence gets nothing, silence ends the game. But here's the shift most people never make. The moment you stop taking provocation personally, it becomes information. Instead of asking, how dare they? You begin asking, why this? Why now? Why that tone? Why this insecurity surfacing here? You start noticing patterns. You see that mockery often hides envy, that aggression often masks fear, that disrespect often comes from people who feel small in your presence. And once you see that, anger becomes unnecessary. Because why be angry at someone who is exposing themselves? Why feel attacked by someone who is leaking their weakness? This is where the shift from reactor to observer happens. While others are emotionally invested, you become analytically curious. While others are defending their pride, you're mapping the terrain. You're no longer inside the moment. You're above it. And from that position, something powerful happens. You stop being predictable. Predictability is what makes people controllable. When someone knows you'll always react to disrespect, they can steer you. When they know you'll always defend yourself, they can bait you. When they know you'll always explain, they can exhaust you. But when your reactions disappear, the script breaks. They don't know what you'll do next. And uncertainty is destabilizing. Most people need emotional feedback to feel in control. Take that away, and they start unraveling. They talk more. They escalate. They reveal too much. While you say nothing, this is not passivity. This is not weakness. This is positional dominance. You're no longer fighting inside the game. You're watching it operate. And once you see the game clearly, anger loses its purpose. Because anger only exists when you believe you're being attacked. Observation reveals something else entirely. You're not under attack. You're being tested. And tests are meant to be evaluated, not reacted to. There is a form of power so misunderstood that most people never even try to use it. They mistake it for weakness. They confuse it with apathy. They assume it means you've been affected more than you're letting on. They're wrong. The most effective response to provocation is not a counterattack. It's nothing, not avoidance, not withdrawal, but controlled, deliberate indifference. Because indifference doesn't just deny conflict, it rewrites the hierarchy. When someone provokes you, they expect friction. They expect heat. They expect resistance. They are prepared for anger. They are prepared for defense. They are prepared for escalation. What they are never prepared for is stillness. When their words land and nothing happens. No reaction. No explanation. no visible wound. Something inside them destabilizes, because provocation only works when it's acknowledged. Anger tells the other person they matter. Defense tells them they reached you. Explanation tells them you feel the need to justify yourself. Indifference tells them something far more unsettling. You don't qualify. This is why appearance matters more than feeling. You don't need to kill the emotion inside you instantly. That comes with time. What matters first is what you show, the face you present, the pace you keep, the silence you allow to stretch. Perception creates reality long before reality catches up. When someone attacks you and you remain composed, they don't see strength. They feel it. They begin to doubt their read of you. They question whether their strike landed. They replay the moment in their head. And while they're doing that, you're already ahead. This is the mask. Not a fake smile, not smugness, not cold arrogance, but neutrality, a calm that reveals nothing, eyes that don't explain, posture that doesn't rush. This mask does something anger never can. It removes the other person's leverage, because leverage only exists when there's something to pull on. When you give nothing, there's nothing to grab. This is psychological pressure in its purest form. The unreadable man is unsettling because he breaks patterns. People rely on emotional feedback to orient themselves. They want to know where they stand. They want confirmation of impact. They want reassurance that they still matter in the exchange. When you deny them that, they lose footing. They speak more. They push harder. They escalate. And in doing so, they expose themselves. You don't need to trap them. They walk into it. This is where most people fail. They think indifference means ignoring everything. They think it means disengaging from the world. It doesn't. It means choosing when to engage. You're not withdrawing. You're withholding. Withholding reactions. Withholding emotional access. Withholding the satisfaction of control. That distinction is everything, because the goal isn't to disappear. The goal is to remain present without being penetrable. When someone realizes they can't move you, they adjust. Some retreat. Some reveal resentment. Some grow cautious. All outcomes work in your favor. Anger gives people information about you. Silence forces them to reveal information about themselves. That's the trade, and it's always uneven. This is why the most influential people are rarely the most expressive. They don't rush to clarify. They don't rush to defend. They don't rush to correct perceptions. They let others project. Projection is a gift. People fill silence with their assumptions. They assign depth where they don't have access. They imagine motives where they don't receive explanations. And once someone projects onto you, they stop seeing you clearly. They see what they bring into the interaction. This is where power consolidates quietly, not through dominance displays, not through confrontation, but through emotional opacity. You are no longer broadcasting your inner state. You are no longer available for manipulation. And something subtle begins to shift inside you as well. When you stop reacting outwardly, you begin observing inwardly. You feel the emotion rise, and then you watch it pass. You realize it doesn't control you unless you move with it. That realization is the beginning of sovereignty, because once you understand that you don't have to act on every impulse, you stop being governed by the moment. You become governed by choice, and choice is where real power lives. There is one dependency that makes anger inevitable: the need to be approved. As long as your sense of worth lives outside you, you are exposed. As long as other people's reactions matter, they can move you. As long as validation comes from the world controls your nervous system. This is the part most people never confront. They say they don't care what others think. They say they're independent. They say they're unfazed. But their reactions betray them. An insult hurts because some part of you still wants agreement. A dismissal stings because some part of you still seeks recognition. Anger erupts because something you value feels threatened. Not your safety, your image. Once you understand this, the structure becomes obvious. People can only anger you through something you need from them: approval, respect, acknowledgement, belonging. Remove the need, and the leverage collapses. This is not about pretending you don't care. Pretending creates tension. Tension leaks. This is about relocating your center of gravity. Instead of asking, "How do they see me?" you begin asking, "Do I meet my own standards?" That shift changes everything. When your worth is internally sourced, insults lose their landing surface. They pass through you without sticking. Like sound through an empty room. You don't argue with noise. You don't defend against weather. You simply notice and move on. This is where most people panic. They confuse detachment with arrogance. They confuse independence with isolation. They confuse self-sufficiency with coldness. But detachment is not cruelty. It's clarity. Clarity about who matters. Clarity about what deserves emotional investment. Clarity about what advances your life and what drains it. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Not everyone in your life qualifies for emotional access. Some people are transient. Some are situational. Some exist only to test your boundaries. Treating all opinions as equal is not humility. It's negligence. When you attach emotionally to everyone, you give everyone power. When you give everyone power, someone will use it irresponsibly. This is why anger follows overexposure. You've handed access to people who haven't earned it. The correction is simple, but not easy. You stop viewing people as judges of your worth. You start viewing interactions as data. What does this person bring into my life? What pattern do they repeat? Do they add stability or chaos? These are not moral judgments. They are strategic assessments. You can treat people with respect without letting them inside your emotional perimeter. Respect is external. Access is internal. Confusing the two is costly. Once you make this distinction, something critical changes. You stop personalizing behavior that was never about you. Mockery reveals insecurity. Dismissal reveals fear. Aggression reveals loss of control. These behaviors don't require emotional response. They require interpretation. And interpretation requires distance. The moment you stop needing approval, anger becomes optional. Because what are you defending? Your identity is no longer on trial. Your value is no longer up for debate. Your direction is no longer subject to consensus. This is when your presence shifts. People sense it before you say anything. You don't chase agreement. You don't rush to explain. You don't flinch at misunderstanding. That unsettles people, because most are used to controlling others through reaction. When reaction disappears, manipulation has nowhere to land. This is the foundation of emotional independence. Not numbness, not suppression, but ownership. You feel emotions without obeying them. You register opinions without internalizing them. You listen without surrendering position. And in doing so, you reclaim something most people never fully possess: autonomy. Not the loud kind, not the performative kind, the quiet kind that can't be taken. This is where anger finally loses its grip, because anger requires permission, and you stop giving it. There is a hard truth most people avoid because it leaves them with no one to blame. If someone can make you angry, they already rule you. Not metaphorically, functionally. They dictate your internal state. They redirect your focus. They interfere with your judgment, and they do it without lifting a finger. This is why emotional control is not a preference. It's sovereignty. Before you can command respect in the world, you must establish order within yourself. Your mind is a territory. Your attention is a resource. Your emotions are forces that either serve you or sabotage you. If you do not govern them deliberately, they will be governed by circumstance. Most people live this way without realizing it. They wake up reactive. They move through the day in response mode. They let conversations, comments, messages, and moods dictate their internal climate. They call this being human. It's not. It's being unmanaged. Every time an external event disturbs your inner state, a boundary has failed. Every time someone's words linger in your mind longer than necessary, access has been granted too easily. This is not about becoming emotionless. It's about becoming decisive. Decisive about what thoughts are allowed to stay. Decisive about which emotions deserve energy. Decisive about what reactions are permitted to surface. Without this decisiveness, anger will always find a way in. Because anger thrives in disorder, it feeds on unexamined impulses. It grows in minds that haven't established authority over themselves. Self-rule begins with awareness, noticing the first signal, not the explosion, the tightening in the chest, the urge to respond immediately, the impulse to defend, explain, or retaliate. These are early warnings. Most people ignore them and deal with the aftermath. The disciplined individual intervenes earlier. He sees the thought form. He recognizes the emotion rising, and he pauses. That pause is not hesitation. It's command. In that moment, you decide, does this serve my position? Does this advance my objectives? Does this deserve space in my mind? If the answer is no, the response ends there, not through suppression, but through refusal. You do not need to wrestle emotions into submission. You simply stop feeding them. Attention is fuel. Withdraw it, and the emotion weakens. This is how order is maintained internally. Thoughts that undermine you are dismissed. Emotions that destabilize you are observed, then released. Reactions that give power away are denied permission to act. This requires discipline. Not the dramatic kind. The quiet, repetitive kind. The kind built through daily review. At the end of each day, you examine the breaches. Where did anger arise? What triggered it? What belief allowed it through? Not to judge yourself, but to refine your defenses. This is how inner order is constructed, not through motivation, through standards. Standards for how you respond. Standards for how you speak. Standards for how much access others receive. Once these standards are established, something remarkable happens. Chaos loses influence. Provocations fall flat. Insults lose heat. Disrespect reveals itself quickly and is dealt with cleanly, not emotionally, strategically, because you are no longer reacting from wounded pride. You are acting from governed clarity. This is the difference between restraint and repression. Repression is force without understanding. Restraint is control through awareness. One creates tension, the other creates freedom. And with freedom comes patience. You no longer need to respond immediately. You no longer feel compelled to correct every slight. You no longer burn and weapon energy on people who don't matter. Time becomes an ally. You allow situations to reveal themselves. You let patterns complete. You act when leverage is highest, not when emotion demands release. This is what separates amateurs from strategists. The amateur reacts to relief. The strategist responds to advantage. By now, anger no longer feels like power to you. It feels inefficient, clumsy, exposing. You see it for what it is, a signal that something internal still needs tightening. And each time it appears, you correct it, calmly, methodically, until reaction becomes rare. And when reaction disappears, so does manipulation, because no one can rule a kingdom that is already governed. At this point, the pattern should be clear. Anger was never strength. It was access. Access you gave away. access others learned to exploit. Every reaction taught people how to move you. Every outburst showed them where to press. Every explanation handed them leverage. And now you understand why the most controlled individuals are also the most difficult to touch. They don't react because they don't need to. They don't defend because their position isn't fragile. They don't explain because clarity inside removes the urge to justify outside. This is what it means to stop losing before the fight even begins. You no longer confuse intensity with power. You no longer mistake emotion for authority. You no longer burn energy proving things to people who were never qualified to judge you. Instead, you move differently. You observe first. You pause where others rush. You choose responses the way others choose excuses. And because of that, the entire dynamic changes. People feel it before they can name it. They notice that their words don't land the way they used to, that their provocations stall in midair, that you don't move when they expect you to. Some will retreat. Some will escalate. Some will quietly adjust how they treat you. All outcomes confirm the same thing. You are no longer available for control. This does not make you cold. It makes you precise. It doesn't turn you into someone above others. It turns you into someone beyond their reach. And that's the difference. The world rewards those who can govern themselves under pressure, those who don't outsource their inner state to circumstances, those who can stand in noise without absorbing it. That is why calm is feared. That is why silence unsettles. That is why anger, once understood, loses its appeal entirely, because you now see what it costs. This is not something you perform once and forget. It's a discipline, a standard, a way of moving through the world without bleeding energy at every point of friction. And the more you practice it, the more natural it becomes. Until one day, you realize something quietly unsettling. The things that used to provoke you no longer register, not because you've become numb, but because you've become ordered. If this shift resonates, if you recognize yourself in this transition, then you're already thinking at the level this channel is built for. Subscribe to Psycript. This channel is not about motivation. It's about structure, psychological leverage, and the quiet mechanics of power most people never learn to see. If you want to go deeper into how silence, restraint, and mystery consolidate influence, watch Why Mysterious People Hold All the Cards, the Psychology of Strategic Ambiguity. And if you've ever felt detached, misunderstood, or ahead of the emotional pace of those around you, watch You Don't Hate People. You see through them. These ideas connect. They form a system. And once you understand that system, anger becomes irrelevant, because nothing threatens a man who governs himself. You don't need to announce that change. Others will feel it, and they will adjust accordingly.